Sephiroth creating his own future is already a point in the 1997 original. The Whispers have had literally zero effect on Final Fantasy VII's original trajectory thus far, and Remake Sephiroth is actually nothing like Advent Children's depiction of the character. The two are incompatible because he's just a wholly different thing by that point. There's a reason why the film is still the only version of his music to have different lyrics. Sephiroth in FF7 and in Remake is the one-winged angel with a fragmented mind that he's trying to unify within the boundless divine. He's a deeply traumatized man trying to still his panic by reaching out to Cloud, Jenova, and then God. What we see in the film is the one-winged nightmare with no humanity left at all, because the prequel book explains that before death, Sephiroth had let the lifestream reabsorb all his memories and emotions, tossing out things he no longer deemed necessary so that he could dedicate greater effort toward retaining his sense of hatred for Cloud and the planet. Sephiroth in Advent Children is an autonomous mass of hate and nothing more. Any nuance or turmoil he may have previously had is thrown away. Remake's characters emphasize that Sephiroth is going to these extremes because, in his own crazy way, he's trying to save the planet from something. It's twisted, but there is a love underpinning his actions because his mind still considers himself a savior in some part, perhaps wanting to become the hero of the dawn, healer of worlds, foretold in Loveless, and seeming somewhat gentle when he tells Aerith that she'll be reunited with Zack soon. But in Advent Children, he holds zero concern for its safety and even uses this as a point with which to taunt Cloud. Case of Lifestream offers supporting information to contextualize this as a result of his erased memories, so the remake instance of the character cannot possibly be placed afterwards, because that part of the man's heart has already returned to the planet and been permanently lost. Those are my conclusions that I really want to just get out quick, and you can stay if you now want to hear me elaborate.
What I want to know is, how'd he do it? And what's he after?
He wants to save the planet.
Our beloved planet is dying. Can you bear to see the planet suffer? Cloud.
He'd tell you that he only cares about the planet, that he'd do everything in his power to protect and preserve it. But this isn't the way it's supposed to be.
The reunion, when spite and sorrow are harvested to feed the planet.
Him. He's coming back.
Those remnants will join the life stream and girdle the planet, choking it, corroding it. What I want, Cloud, is to sail the darkness of the cosmos with this planet as my vessel.
What about this planet?
Well, that's up to you, Cloud.
Sephiroth, the nightmare.
I recall that magical month when I first played Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's everything I wanted it to be and more. When I was probably 3/4 of the way through, a passion in my heart boiled over, and I did decide to post a comment somewhere gushing about how much I admired the decision to style its character interactions and combat choreography in a way that better connects to the compilation of Final Fantasy VII. As you may expect, I was then immediately responded to by someone telling me that I was wrong, stupid, and then spoiled that Remake's finale actually does the exact opposite by rejecting the smelly compilation content. Stemming from this, the dominant theory in its review space became one about Advent Children Sephiroth going back in time so that he can relive the original events and better influence them in his favour. and not once have I liked this theory. This is something I've given my stance on time and again, buried hours into either of my relevant reviews on Final Fantasy VII and its remakes. But you are looking at a man who just got laid off. So what else am I supposed to be doing right now, if not talking about Final Fantasy VII Sephiroth? Please indulge me as I just quickly, cleanly lay out why I do not and have never subscribed to the idea that the Sephiroth seen in Final Fantasy VII Remake or Rebirth is the same character from Advent Children somehow instigating a time loop and returning to the beginning in order to rewrite his own story. Even with just that brief summary, I find myself wanting to raise issue with it on multiple levels already. Firstly, because thus far, all we've seen are expansions and additions to the story. It otherwise is proceeding completely according to expectation, with no significant or irreconcilable rewrites. Yes, events have been shuffled around. Yes, they've added a bunch of extra setup as a way of granting more screen time to the hugely popular Zack and Sephiroth. But for all the arbiters of fate or multitude worlds floating about, the core storyline is still the same characters going to the same places for the same reasons and doing the same things in the same way. And I'm not convinced Part 3 will be any different. Aerith feeling an unseen force pulling her to the City of the Ancients, and wanting herself to be the one who stops Sephiroth was already in the original. Sephiroth recognizing her as one of the main obstacles in his plan was already in the original. No, a new section where Cloud heads up to the plate with Jessie does not mean that the timeline has been permanently altered. Despite how much Aerith and Nanaki revere them, the Whispers haven't actually done anything yet. At this stage, they're just a surface level allegory from the directors about how long we've been waiting to see its world again, acknowledging the concerns and expectations that inevitably build up after so many years of people wishing for it. Final Fantasy VII proceeds according to plan, and the Whispers are us the fans, occasionally forcing our way in and saying, okay, but what if Zack and Sephiroth were here? Metaphorical, metaphysical fanfiction. There's still one more game for me to be proven wrong, but so far, all the Whispers have accomplished is just to ruin the imagery of a bunch of important scenes. The only time they're relevant is during their own sections. They otherwise haven't shaped the progression of the story at all. Frankly, next time I replay it, I think I'll install the mod that makes them invisible. Likewise, Zack going through his own timeline shenanigans has no immediate bearing on Final Fantasy VII's overall destination. It just provides an excuse for him to appear because this character is now so much more beloved than he was in the 1997 original. I truly believe that whole part of the story is first and foremost a means of getting Zack on screen. Rebirth even adds an option to disable these sections entirely on New Game Plus. Sephiroth's extra-dimensional space has no immediate bearing on its trajectory either. My guess is that this probably is just creating a more substantial footing for safer Sephiroth's heavenly boss arena. Bizarro Sephiroth appearing early doesn't automatically validate that Sephiroth is supposedly playing with the narrative. This to me just seems like the creators shuffling some things around in a way that affords each game in the trilogy a good Sephiroth fight to close out on. Dividing his ascension between separate battles fundamentally changes nothing in the overarching plot, lore, or setting. Oh, Cloud is talking to Aerith, which must mean his perception is stuck in another plane of existence, and this will have massive plot ramifications that create a new world and bring her back to life. Well, no, not really. We already knew that Cloud sometimes catches sight of her spirit in FF7 and Advent Children. Again, I think this is probably just an expansion of imagery from the original, not anything that will inspire a genuine divergence. It's likely that Cloud sees her here, doesn't fully internalize her passing, and once he does realize it in the next game will be when he returns to the church and spots her, like in FF7 Disc 3. That's my line of thinking on those matters. Almost all of the changing fate stuff has been window dressing, so this alleged future Sephiroth must be doing a pretty poor job of rewriting the story. The 2015 reveal trailer is set to Beyond the Wasteland from Advent Children's soundtrack, but I would explain this away as it just being a fitting piece for the trailer's mysterious tone and because only a select few would have immediately recognised it as FF7 music, allowing the trailer's cliffhanger to really hit. Arranging the Promised Land Cycle of Souls for the aftermath of Sephiroth's first appearance does not confirm a temporal link to the sequel film. It's just them padding the soundtrack with compilation leitmotifs that were otherwise too good to waste, just like Rude's battle theme, which is also adapted from the film. Borrowing a couple of music pieces from Advent Children or referencing a pose from its marketing does not automatically subject Sephiroth to an in-game time loop. These remakes are being made long after the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, so it's not at all unexpected for them to stylistically conform to FF7's new aesthetic in certain aspects, to integrate iconography that became important to FF7's brand, or to make nods to the other entries. It's not only Advent Children though. The remakes interact with Before Crisis, Crisis Core, and Dirge of Cerberus to just as heavy a degree. Traces of Tifa has Barrett mentioning Elfei when he first asks to join Avalanche, and in Rebirth he discusses the insurgents at the Corel reactor as per its new depiction in Before Crisis. The bombing of Calm that Broden recalls is similarly a history first established there. The other member of Nanaki's race spotted in a painting is named Dene, and she too was introduced in BC. Tifa's cat also gets its debut in that game, and again Traces of Tifa has her specifically recount the time she and Fluffy got lost in the mountains together with the playable Turk from it. Zack being given a larger spotlight is a product of Crisis Core's popularity, and they recreate his iconic last stand a number of times throughout the two current remakes. They pull Under the Apple Tree for the new Gongaga BGM, they mention Kunsel, and they even have Cisne appear. Degradation, S cells, G cells, they're all here and very important to the setting. Deep Ground from Dirge of Cerberus have been worked into the world already. Vincent's coffin is decorated with the Cerberus symbol, and the way it presents him harboring chaos aligns to the lore from DOC. As well, Kyrie and Leslie actually debuted in Turk's side story The Kids Are Alright. The whole extended universe is represented in equal part. This is why I have repeatedly referred to it as a unified Final Fantasy VII. Secondly, I take issue because a lot of this claim on Advent Children's Sephiroth enacting a time loop or traversing back to the past hinges on the fact that Sephiroth does seemingly possess future knowledge which he wants to apply in his plans, and the majority audience therefore believing it must be a sign of the story heading in a new direction. Despite the fact that this plot beat actually finds its roots in the original and everyone simply forgot. This exchange happens after Sephiroth obtains the Black Materia at the Temple of the Ancients. Sephiroth says, "I became a traveller of the life stream and gained the knowledge and wisdom of the Ancients. I also gained the knowledge and wisdom of those after the extinction of the Ancients. And soon I will create the future." To which Aerith responds, "I won't let you do it. The future is not only yours." While I don't think that was meant to be a literal remark on timeline alteration, the idea has been there for as long as FF7 has been around. Considering every other part of Remake's plot is also just a massively expanded version of the original script, to me it feels as though the writing team has simply taken this exchange, the scene where Sephiroth and Aerith both manifest into Cloud's dream in the forest, and the scene where Aerith heals the Geostigma in AC, and hugely extrapolated on that dynamic to paint them as symbolically opposing forces in Remake. Following this, those two do come into Remake's story with sage-like knowledge of future events, which creates thematic justification for why Kadaj, Loz, and Yazu themselves are explicitly stated as being channeled into the trio of Whispers in its final battle. Or also why it borrows footage from Advent Children when the larger one's energy makes contact with them. However, importantly, the scene of Aerith's death in that battle is a new cut, which throws the significance of the other shots into question and, in my opinion, compromises that scene's use as evidence of Remake irreparably diverging from the known sequels. The only parts they pull out of the film are from the opening section where it's just recapping FF7 events, not any of Advent Children's own plotline. Because that one scene is different, it makes me interpret their usage of FFAC footage as a cost-saving measure and a fun reference for the fans. If they exclusively wanted us to receive it as them sending a message about the compilation, then they would have used the film's animation of Aerith at the altar instead. Ultimately, neither of those elements, nor any of the prior, are convincing to me in the claim that AC's Sephiroth time-travelled to the start of FF7, because these elements are largely confined to their own chapters, and the base storyline is otherwise the same as it's ever been. But that's not even what I actually wanted to talk about, because rather than getting worked up over lore mechanics that we probably won't fully understand even by the credits roll in the third game, what I do feel confident in saying is that it's just observably not the same person. Indeed, Remake Sephiroth has searched the lifestream and found some knowledge of how the future will progress. This much was true even in FF7. But he himself is not the same continuous character instance crossing over from Advent Children as an alternate future. Because by the time of said film, Sephiroth, for all intents and purposes, no longer exists. The man is a shadow of his former self, missing most his memories and deprived of every emotion other than hatred. He's a fundamentally changed existence to that of Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VII Remake. Sephiroth in the Remake saga aligns to his Advent Children depiction only in the sense that this is the modern version of the character, written, acted, and represented in a way that conforms to where his performance is currently understood. His homoerotic mannerisms, his mad ramblings, and heightened fixation on Cloud. This is just how Sephiroth acts whenever they use him nowadays, because it's where the character's image and personality have developed to across the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, Kingdom Hearts, Dissidia Final Fantasy, Opera Omnia, Mobius Final Fantasy, and the like. For this reason, I still truly believe that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth are just imaginings of what Final Fantasy VII would look like if it stylistically agreed with the compilation, since the 1997 original is so at odds with all its sequels. And that by the end, we'll basically be able to replace FF7 with FF7 Remake in the compilation play order to finally sever its connections to the controversial expanded universe. So I can understand where people see Advent Children Sephiroth within the character acting, insofar as this is just the modern Sephiroth and a lot of his quirks therefore appear. But I really feel that this suggestion collapses when we start talking to the actual character himself. The writing, the motivations, the ambitions. Because that's just not the same Sephiroth as the film. The character we see in the remake is fragmented, caught in a spiritual tug-of-war. His mind is held in the North Crater, being pulled between alien instincts and remnant human tragedy, while also trying to fend off the life stream as it absorbs his memories. He speaks of secretive knowledge and tries to convince everyone that he alone knows the truth. But Sephiroth is a madman, desperately clawing at anything that might restore him. One part of Sephiroth's mind is fighting to reclaim his title as hero. Another is directly opposed to that sentiment and instead wishes to restore Jenova to her full eldritch power so they can subjugate the planet. And a yet equal part is so ashamed of it all that he's trying to disappear into an eternal prison. The hero of man in a state of madness, believing he sees some ultimate truth hidden within his violent delusions. Sephiroth in Final Fantasy VII and in Remake is just as broken as Cloud is, free-falling and desperately grasping at anything he can in search of stability. But since nobody is willing to save him, Sephiroth's lunacy culminates in a belief that he can only protect himself by becoming the highest existence above all others. Betrayal, rage, and sorrow extinguished within divine love. This is the man that Sephiroth was during the original Final Fantasy VII, and so is the expected characterization for him during this period of his storyline. True enough, Sephiroth in Remake and Rebirth has acted wholly in accordance with this sentiment. The one-winged angel, lashing out because his understanding of himself and his place in the world was shattered when stumbling upon the demon in Nibelheim's mountains, forever muddying his capacity to properly understand the boundaries of love, self, and hatred. Advent Children's Sephiroth, though, does not have any of that inner conflict or tragic nuance left. Due to the mental assault that his soul is suffering in the background of Final Fantasy VII, the longer the story goes on, the less of the original man is left, and by the time the game ends, he can barely be considered human anymore. In fact, this stage has been christened the One-Winged Nightmare in its War of the Visions release. Sephiroth's role within Advent Children itself is short-lived and mostly consists of combat, so to find insight into his psyche, we instead refer to its accompanying anthology book On the Way to a Smile, a collection of short stories that reveal how these people all bridged the 2-year gap from the game to the film. Case of Lifestream Black introduces Sephiroth into the post-Meteor Fall time period by first explaining that when the Lifestream rushes against Meteor, his own memories also get swept up in that flow. Though he perhaps could have resisted a bit more, Sephiroth willingly lets them go. Memories of his childhood or his few loved ones. The last pieces of humanity he held are discarded. He still manages to hold on to his ego after Cloud strikes him down, but the specifics of his personality or his connection to humanity are gone forever. Who he was, how he looked, where he came from, and what he wanted, Sephiroth no longer remembers. From within the stream, his spirit gazes out and finds that the only strong indicator of himself left in the world is the hatred that still burns within Cloud, creating the remnants to make contact with him and so use that emotion as the core of his resurrected existence. Advent Children Sephiroth's only foundation is hatred. The human tragedy or corrupted love for the world which defined his life are entirely wiped away. The single feeling Sephiroth has left to understand himself with by this point is a hatred for the world around him. During the events of FF7, Sephiroth had repeatedly tried to establish a connection with Cloud and Jenova, because there's some grand design to his deceptions, some goal he wants to achieve alongside them. He deliberately overlooks several opportunities to kill the party because they're all necessary for his endgame. He could just carve up Midgar after the party have left, or send one of his cultists to grab the black materia. But that's never been the point of Sephiroth. He's trying to prove something to the world and himself through his actions, which often involves using Cloud's response as his own moral compass. What that central thing is fluctuates along the storyline because Sephiroth constantly contradicts himself due to insanity and mental instability. But nevertheless, the method is just as important as the end goal. In the film though, Sephiroth immediately goes for the throat. There's no panic, there's no insanity, there's no twisted heroism or murky, distorted sense of love underpinning his actions. Sephiroth just wants to torment Cloud for a brief moment before fully embracing his alien instincts and disappearing into the cosmos. The livestream stole all recollection of his days as a hero, or his life before Jenova, and he willingly threw away the memory of his few friends like Genesis, Angeal, or Glenn. Advent Children's villain has entirely given up on humanity and has no care left for the planet. Whereas in Rebirth, Cloud describes Sephiroth as having an earnest desire to save the world from some impending cataclysm, even if his methodologies are violent and insane. And the madman himself later reiterates this, which is an impossible thought for his mind after Meteorfall. They don't act the same, their goals don't align, and On the Way to a Smile gives a solid reason to believe that they can't be the same. Therefore, I just truly do not believe that the two characters could possibly be considered a continuous instance. Remake's Sephiroth, though coming with the flamboyance of all his other modernized depictions, is still fundamentally that same tormented mind that can be seen buried even in the text of the 1997 original. Unlike the character's final appearance in the film, where his ego has at last become complete again by ruthlessly severing all of his lingering attachments to the world of man. An angel and a nightmare.